Hi, I'm Snigdha Sharma and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we discuss Phase 2 of the West Bengal Assembly election and Mamata Banerjee's letter to the opposition leaders. We also discuss Assam's Barak Valley in light of the ongoing assembly elections in the state, along with Pakistan's decision to backtrack on its initial plan of lifting the import ban on some Indian goods. Beginning with West Bengal. Yesterday, the second phase of polling was conducted in West Bengal's 30 constituencies, including the high-profile seat of Nandigram. The voting saw a face-off between the Trinamool Congress and the BJP workers at a polling booth in Nandigram, which has become the focal point of the Bengal elections. The area has witnessed the first-hand battle between Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee and her protege-turned-arch-rival BJP's Suvendu Adhikari. A day before the polling actually began, the Chief Minister wrote a letter addressed to the opposition leaders all over the country, asking them to unite against the BJP's one-party authoritarian rule and proposing that they chart a plan of action after the elections. In this segment, we spoke to Indian Express's Atri Mitra, who was in Nandigram all day yesterday, about how Phase 2 of the polling went and also about the Chief Minister's letter. Before I get on to the conversation with Autry, I'd like to apologize for the audio quality. It was the best we could do since Autry was on the go when we recorded the segment. Autry, to begin with, if you could tell us how Phase 2 of polling went in Nandigram and what were the most important events of the day?
Snigdha, today is the big day for West Bengal election. Two big names, Suvendu Adhikari and Mamata Banerjee, is fighting in Nandigram, and today is the polling day in Nandigram. And from morning, it was almost peaceful election, but after 12, there are some small incident in Nandigram, in like Gokulnagar, Samsabad, Boyal. There are some small incident, stray incident, but from morning there are many complaint from TMC that against BJP and against central forces. They are complaining that BJP, in many places, BJP are obstructing their polling agent to work or in seat in the polling booths. Basically, they were complaining that in many places, central force are obstructing villagers to go to the polling booth and cast their votes. At 1 p.m., Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee came out from her house in wheelchair, where she is staying in rent in Reapara. She came out from that house and went to the polling booth, number 7 polling booth in Boyal. And CM, Chief Minister, went in the booth and complained to the presiding officer that already 80% vote were casted and there are massive rigging in that booth. And TMC polling agent also kicked away from the booth by BJP supporters. In the meantime, BJP supporters are coming from the Boyal area, Boyal 7 number booth area, and TMC supporters are came over there from booth number 4 area. Those who are sloganing supporting Mamata Banerjee, and they're sloganing like Khela hobe, and on the other side, BJP workers, BJP supporters are sloganing Jai Sri Ram against Mamata Banerjee. They are shouting, and they are on the other side. They are shouting against Suvendu Adhikari.
Caught in the middle of these two opposing groups, Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee was held up for close to 2 hours until she called up the West Bengal Governor Jagdeep Dhankar. On the phone, she told the governor that the situation was a failure because of the Election Commission, which was supposed to make sure that the polling process is carried out smoothly. The Chief Minister went on to call out the Election Commission and even threatened to go to court over the body's alleged inaction when it came to Trinamool Congress's poll-related complaints. Autry told us what these complaints were and if the Election Commission has responded to her complaints.
Chief Minister complained against ECI, they are favoring BJP, and she also complained that Union Home Minister Amit Shah is instructed central forces to help BJP and outsiders. Chief Minister complained that rigging in some booths in Nandigram, and especially the number 7 booth in Boyal 1 area of Nandigram 2 block. But ECI did not react on that allegation, Chief Minister's allegation. And Chief Minister told us she complained to the governor, she complained to ECI, she complained to Chief Secretary and DGP of West Bengal, and she may go to court as well.
Right. So, Audrey, yesterday, Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee wrote this letter calling political parties to unite against the BJP. Can you tell us more about the contents of this letter?
Yeah, Chief Minister basically wrote a 3-page letter addressed to more than dozen non-BJP leaders like Congress President Sonia Gandhi, NCP Chief Sharad Pawar, Shiv Sena Supremo Uddhav Thackeray, Arvind Kejriwal, Tejaswi Jadhav, Akhilesh Jadhav, M.K. Stalin, and many others leaders. Basically accused BJP that this party and their government at the center is attacking democracy and constitutional federalism in India. And she basically cited the example that recently passed in government of National Capital Territory of Delhi bill. With this, she said, she wrote in the letter, with this law, the Lieutenant Governor Delhi has been made the undeclared Viceroy of Delhi, acting as a proxy for the Home Minister and the Prime Minister. The government had snatched away practically all the powers of the democratically elected government of Delhi. And she also cited 6 other instances of highlighting her point. She wrote that governors functioning as BJP office bearers, use of investigating agencies against opposition parties and governments, withholding transfer of funds to non-BJP states, disbanding of the National Development Council, Interstate Council, Planning Commission, amassing of unlimited resources by the BJP to topple non-BJP governments, and the central government's reckless policies of privatization of the national assets. These are the these are the thing CM basically highlighted in her letter.
Okay, so what was the response to the letter from each political party?
We haven't got any response from any other party formally, except Mehbooba Mufti, who welcomed Mamta's move, and she told that that is the only way to fight against BJP.
Meanwhile, hitting out at Mamata Banerjee for writing a letter to opposition leaders to unite against his party, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, while addressing a rally in Bengal's Uluberia, said that the Chief Minister is so frustrated after the first phase of polling that she is seeking help from those whom she considers outsiders and tourists. And now coming to Assam's Barak Valley. Located in the southern reaches of the northeastern state, the area is named after the 900-kilometer-long river that flows right through the region. Now that the election battle in Assam is neck to neck, this region with 15 assembly seats has gained importance due to its unique history related to India's partition in 1947. The valley consists of 3 administrative districts, namely Kachar, Karimganj and Halyakandi. And the most important town in the region is Silchar, a name that many of you might be familiar with. In this segment, we spoke to Tora Agarwala, a reporter from Assam who travelled to the region and wrote a ground report titled Assam, Barak Valley Split Wide Open. What use are roads if you spread hate? You'll find the complete report on our website, indianexpress.com. So Tora, if you could begin by telling us the history of this region.
So, in most of Assam, the major fault lines are usually ethnic or linguistic. But in Barak Valley, which is located in the southern tip of Assam, the fault lines are usually religious. And that's because of Barak Valley's unique history. So, this region, which is made up of 3 districts, Kachar, Karimganj and Hailakandi, this is basically Assam's partition frontier. And, while it's very common to focus on the partition which happened in the western side of the country, the partition which happened in the eastern frontier of the country is equally heartbreaking, and unfortunately not much focus is put on it. And till today, the partition has a lot of impact on the politics of today as well. So what happened was this area shares a border with Bangladesh. And in 1947, when boundaries were being redrawn, then most of Assam, it's not Assam like it is today. So most of Assam went to East Pakistan, which was Bangladesh then, and this included a considerable chunk of Bengali speaking Sylhet. So that was joined with East Pakistan, and one part of Sylhet was kept in India as part of Assam, and that was Karimganj. And that's how the partition happened in 47. And after that, lot of Bengali Hindus who lived in Sylhet started migrating to Assam across the border because they wanted to avoid they were fleeing from the religious persecution which happened in East Pakistan, and second, it was also because they came in search of economic opportunities. So basically, this particular region has seen a lot of migration of Hindu Bengalis coming in, and as a result, the entire area is primarily dominated by Bengali speaking people. I mean, there are other communities as well, but in smaller numbers. There are Tea tribes and Manipuris and Nepalis also. But this area is primarily Bengali speakers with an equal number of Hindus and Muslims. And because of partition and because of the events which happened then, it's been a very polarized place historically.
Right. So electorally, how important is Barak Valley right now?
So the three districts of Barak Valley, Kachar, Karimganj and Hailakandi, they account for 15 seats out of the 126 seats in Assam. And when you come to think of it, 15 out of 126 doesn't seem like a big number. But at this point, since it's such a tight contest in Assam, every seat matters. Here, mostly, as I said earlier, because of polarization, because it's been historically polarized area. Of course, there's the BJP, and traditionally most Hindus vote for the BJP. And then there is Congress, of course, and also the AIUDF, Badruddin Ajmal's AIUDF. And usually Muslims would vote for either of these parties. This election is interesting because the AIUDF and the Congress have allied, and most votes may consolidate, and most anti-BJP votes may consolidate and sort of give the Mahajot an edge over the BJP in the Barak Valley.
Okay, so how are the various parties campaigning in the region currently?
So when I was there a few days back, that was just right around, it was very close to the election. So obviously, like all the parties were campaigning in full force. And since Silchar, which is the capital, which is the sort of the gateway to Barak Valley, is where most of the action was. And it's quite a small, congested town. So every 5-10 minutes, there would be these autos with blaring speakers. And since mostly there are Bengalis living there, Bengali speakers living there, so most of these slogans were all in Bengali. Interestingly, Khela Hobe is also a slogan which is abundantly used in this area while campaigning. And the BJP is campaigning on the issues which it has been in the rest of Assam. So, developmental schemes and the roads they've built and whatever else they've done in the last 5 years, which have sort of helped the region. They've been talking about all of that. And the Congress is talking about, they have these 5 guarantees, part of the manifesto. So they're talking about the guarantees, not CAA so much, because CAA plays out a little differently here than in the rest of Assam, but they've been talking about unemployment, jobs, price rise, and things like that.
Tora, in your report, you said that the BJP's ties to the region go back to the 1990s. If you could tell us a little more about that.
BJP became a formidable force in Assam only in 2016 when it had this landslide victory in the assembly elections. But interestingly, it first made inroads into Assam way back in 1991, and it was only in the Barak Valley. So in 1991, they won 9 out of 10 seats which they had contested. In 1996, they won all 4 seats. And also the Kachar unit of the BJP was formed way before the Assam unit of the BJP was floated. This is because, as I said earlier, since it is a polarized area, it sort of helped the BJP to make its mark in Assam way before it did in the rest of the state. And also, this BJP's vision of India being the natural home for Hindus. The Bengali Hindu in Barak Valley sort of fits that vision because most of these Bengali Hindus did come during the partition, fleeing religious persecution. So that is probably why the BJP was able to make its mark in Barak Valley way before it did in the rest of Assam.
Right. So, what were some of your most important observations from the ground, especially with regard to CAA and the BJP's rhetoric against Muslims?
So, what I found on the ground didn't greatly surprise me because this area is known to be traditionally polarized. But what was interesting is that how much more polarized it has become in the last 5 years. When I was speaking to various people from different communities on the ground, and obviously one reason is the Citizenship Amendment Act. That has sort of created the divide further because it leaves out Muslims, right? So many Muslims feel a little upset about that for sure. And while in rest of Assam it's a little different, here the most of the migrants in Barak Valley are considered to be Hindus because, as I said, many Hindus came into the region when the partition happened. I mean, that time, of course, it was all one country before that. So both Sylhet and what is currently Barak Valley now had, cultural ties and also social networks as well. So, I mean, this was also home for them. So it was only natural that they would just come during, after partition. So what I found on the ground otherwise was that apart from not just the CAA, because the CAA has been a while since the CAA, almost this whole opposition to the CAA started in Assam in 2018 itself. But because Barak Valley is made up mostly of Bengali Hindus, there is support for the CAA here for obvious reasons. So apart from the Hindus supporting the CAA, the Muslims opposing it, there's also, in the last 5 years, the BJP has increased its polarizing rhetoric a lot. And especially in the run-up to the assembly elections, there have been a lot of anti-minority statements with many BJP leaders equating them with Mughals or saying things like this election is about a clash of cultures and clash of civilizations in Assam or similar things like that. So what I found was that many Muslims quite disturbed by that, and not just Assam, but whatever is happening in the rest of the country with mob lynchings or this whole rhetoric about love jihad and things like that. So they feel really bad about that, which is sort of further pushing them away from the BJP. Now, in the last 5 years, Barak has always been perceived as a area which has been ignored when it comes to development. But in the last 5 years, the BJP has done quite a bit of development work, not just in Barak, but all of Assam. So they brought the broad gauge railway line to Barak for the first time. They built a number of bridges, and of course, their schemes have also helped. So many Muslims who I met had voted for BJP in 2016, in the hope for change. And none of them denied that BJP hadn't done work. They all said that there has been, there are better roads. There was a long-standing demand for a passport kendra in Barak Valley, and they got that. So a number of things like that have happened. And a professor told me that many Muslims had also developed a soft corner and were happy with the BJP. But in the last 2-3 years, when they've seen that, the so many speeches which make anti-Muslim comments and other things BJP have done, including the CAA, they have, that's affected them, that's disturbed them. Like one person told me that they can build all the roads in the world, but they are also spreading hate at the same time. What's the point of scooties and what's the point of dole-outs if you have to make fun of us and sort of say things like lungi and all of that? So that is why a number of Muslims who were actually on the BJP side have also moved away from them.
Right. So, Tora, in your report, you mentioned that there are some factors that could weaken BJP's position in the region. If you could tell us a little more about it.
First, I had told you that, because the anti-BJP vote consolidate because of Congress and the AIUDF coming together, there's another reason why BJP may lose out this election is because of purely local factors, and that is a number of candidates. The candidate selection is sort of a little unpopular because the BJP has dropped a number of sitting MLAs and placed, new people. And of course, in an assembly election, the MLA matters, the candidate matters a lot. So, for example, in Silchar, the sitting MLA who's been in BJP for a number of years, he was dropped, Dilip Kumar Pal. And right now he is contesting as an independent. So while probably BJP would have won in Silchar, now it's a triangular contest, and the independent MLA who was early with the BJP may end up cutting their votes.
Moving on to Pakistan's ban on Indian imports. In what was a complete U-turn, Pakistan's cabinet on Thursday rejected the proposal of a high-powered committee to import cotton and sugar from India. The country's foreign minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi asserted that there can be no normalization of ties until New Delhi reverses its decision to revoke the special status of Jammu and Kashmir. The somersault came a day after the Economic Coordination Committee, or the ECC, under the newly appointed Finance Minister Hamad Azhar, decided to buy 2 key items from India, lifting a nearly 2-year-long ban on their import from the neighbouring country. Qureshi said that the issue of import of cotton and sugar from India was discussed during the cabinet meeting chaired by Prime Minister Imran Khan. Qureshi, in a video message, said, and I quote, "An impression is being created that relations with India have become normal and trade has been restored. On this impression, the Prime Minister and the Cabinet had a consensus opinion that until India reviewed the unilateral actions of August 5, 2019, it would not be possible to normalize ties with India." Unquote. Finance Minister Azhar's announcement on Wednesday to import cotton and sugar from India had raised hopes of a partial revival of bilateral trade relations, which was suspended after the August 5, 2019 decision of New Delhi to revoke the special status of Jammu and Kashmir. India is the world's biggest producer of cotton and the second biggest sugar manufacturer. Azhar's decision became doubtful since afternoon, but officials kept mum, and finally the first confirmation came from Minister of Human Rights Shireen Mazari, who is known for her hawkish stand on Kashmir. Mazari said that the Prime Minister Khan had made it clear that there can be no normalization of relations with India until they reverse their actions in Kashmir. In May 2020, Pakistan had lifted the ban on import of medicines and raw material of essential drugs from India amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Ties between India and Pakistan had nosedived after a terror attack on Pathankot Air Force Base in 2016 by terror groups based in Pakistan. Subsequent attacks, including one on an Indian Army camp in Uri, further deteriorated the relationship. The ties strained further after India's warplanes pounded a Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorist training camp deep inside Pakistan on February 26, 2019, in response to the Pulwama terror attack of 2019, in which 40 CRPF Jawans were killed. India's move to revoke the special status of Jammu and Kashmir in 2019 had angered Pakistan, which in turn downgraded diplomatic ties with India and expelled the Indian High Commissioner in Islamabad. Pakistan also snapped all air and land links with India and suspended trade and railway services. You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Snigdha Sharma, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. You can follow us and leave us feedback on Facebook or Twitter at Express Podcasts, or send us an email at podcasts@indianexpress.com. And if you like this show, please do subscribe and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts from so more people can find us. You can also look for us in the audio section in the top right corner of our website, indianexpress.com.